Hello and welcome to our webcast for May 25, 2018. My name is Christian Debré and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
And also joining us, Taylor Ayat, our policy analyst and our outreach coordinator.
Hi.
Hi. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religion organization by and for people with disability and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disabilities. Today's topics: profiteering from assisted suicide and euthanasia. Secondly, update to bills in Guernsey, Finland, and New Zealand. So, Amy Asbrook will help us through those subjects.
Yep, I sure will. I'll do my best anyway. All right, our first topic is profiteering from assisted suicide and euthanasia.
We predicted 4 years ago.
Yeah, we knew this was coming. So this week we noticed a couple of two news stories about people profiting from assisted suicide. The first concerns charges brought against the founder of the Swiss suicide organization Dignitas. The other is a Texas hospice where patients were killed to save money. Ludwig Minelli, a Swiss lawyer who founded the nonprofit Dignitas in 1998, has been charged with profiteering from patients and exploiting their suffering for his own benefit.
Dignitas is the company in Switzerland who is very known where rich people going to suicide themselves.
Right, exactly. The charges come from two separate incidents. In 2010, Minelli reportedly charged an 85-year-old woman and her daughter 10,000 Swiss francs each. That's over 10,100 Canadian dollars to arrange their suicides. So that's basically 20,000 francs for the two of them.
Yeah.
And this was twice the usual rate. So to call up a doctor, to get the doctor to come over there, to use the space, it costs 5,000 francs.
And they charge
extra. They charge double that for those two people for some reason. The prosecution argued that the women agreed to the excessive fees because they were desperate. And it's worth noting that Dignitas staff do not participate in the deaths themselves. Instead, they provide a location and recruit willing medical professionals to actually administer the drugs.
Everywhere there is death doctor.
Right.
Reminder is that in 1940 war, the Second World War, in every camp there was a doctor, and there was 1,200 death camp in the Second World War.
Yeah.
So there was 1,200 death doctor.
Yeah.
So they exist everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. In a 2003 incident, an 80-year-old woman seeking assisted suicide was in distress but did not have a terminal illness. 3 doctors contacted by Mr. Minelli refused to end her life on ethical grounds.
Not one.
Not
3. 1, 2, 3. It's no, no, no. And they need a 4th one to have a yes.
Right. So a 4th physician was eventually found to prescribe the lethal drug. And again, this is the whole doctor shopping thing. It should stop after they get a first refusal. Yeah. But no, people keep going and they keep looking and they get refusal after refusal, and finally...
It should be completely illegal.
Right.
Completely.
Yeah. Mr. Minelli's persistence was reportedly motivated by the promise of a gift of 10,000 Swiss francs, nearly $114,000 Canadian, at that time. Obviously I was evaluating the value of the franc at that moment.
Yeah.
In the woman's will. So she had promised 100,000 francs, and that was maybe why he persisted in trying to find a doctor to euthanize her. Mr. Minnelli allegedly neglected to bury the woman's ashes near her husband's remains as requested. Instead, he scattered them in Lake Zurich.
Yeah, it's easier. Just throw it away.
Toxic waste dump.
Yeah. If you don't have any respect when you are living,
Right.
don't expect to have some when you're dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Taylor, did you want to add anything?
No, my comment was just stolen.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry. I jumped in.
What was done with her ashes was just as bad as the fees.
Sorry. My fault.
That's okay. He knew that this was her so-called only option to get what she wanted in death, and her wishes for what should happen to her body after death weren't even followed properly.
Right, exactly. And that's very disrespectful.
Yeah, that's at least
Right.
disrespectful.
Right. Assisted suicide is legal in Switzerland except for self-serving motives, such as taking excessive profits, like in this situation. The prosecution has asked for a fine of 7,000 francs, over $9,000 Canadian, with a quote-unquote suspended fine of 65,000 francs. So $9,000 isn't that much. And that's what he would have to pay. It isn't even as much as any of those people paid for their fee.
So it's very, very small
fine
yeah.
if he's convicted for, basically violating the law and killing people who were not eligible.
And it is, in any country, the homicide law.
Right, exactly. And so the reason they suspend the $65,000 francs fine, I don't know. We don't know, but that's what they're proposing as the punishment if he's convicted. In another case closer to home, the operations director of a Texas hospice has pleaded guilty to hastening the deaths and other abuses of people receiving care. Melanie Murphy of Nexus Health Services in Frisco, Texas, also pleaded guilty to charges of healthcare fraud.
She pleaded guilty.
Right. She pleaded guilty. She cut a deal. She cut a deal, and she will testify that the hospital's owners profited from a $60 million fraud scheme.
Yeah.
So they killed people and they stole $60 million.
And she pleaded guilty because she is guilty and she knows that.
Right, exactly. Ms. Murphy, go ahead.
She just tried to save her skin.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Ms. Murphy admitted to defrauding Medicare and Medicaid, quote, by billing them for patients who did not qualify for hospice services, unquote. She also created false do not resuscitate forms to avoid paying for ambulance trips to hospital if 911 was called.
Kill the people instead to care for them.
Right, exactly. If there was an emergency, instead of calling an ambulance to transport the person to the hospital for critical care,
let her dead.
Just produce this falsified DNR form saying, "Oh yeah, the person just wanted to die, didn't want to be resuscitated."
That's it. She's gone.
Right. And they also used nurses' notes to complete forms as if she were a doctor. So,
wow,
falsifying forms as if she was writing doctor's notes on the forms. The facility owner, Bradley Harris, ordered that patients who stayed there longer than was profitable receive doses of narcotics high enough to kill them. So in Medicare pays for 6 months of hospice service.
Yeah.
If the person lived longer than 6 months, then basically he was saying, well, we're not going to get paid by Medicare anymore, so we'll just give them extra morphine or Dilaudid.
Yeah, kill him.
Kill him.
That's the term. Kill the person.
Right.
Mhm.
He is alleged to have sent a text to a nurse that read, "You need to make this patient go bye-bye."
Yeah, and it's the exact term.
Yeah, that's a direct quote from the article. Neither Ms. Murphy nor Mr. Harris has any medical training. A federal investigation into their actions began in 2016. Ms. Murphy could spend up to 10 years in prison. So she admitted her crime. This is the deal she cut. She admitted her crime and has up to 10 years in prison to spend. It could have been that much worse.
Oh yeah, she could. In Texas, she could be. I think it's electrical chair.
No, they used lethal injection, but I don't. I don't.
She may have received her own medicine.
I don't think she was charged with murder.
I don't think.
I think they reduced the charge.
There was administrator, and they act like administrator doing job over for a car or a freezer.
Right.
But they was human.
Right.
Like you and me and her.
Right. Okay. These stories point to two major problems with end-of-life care. People living in institutions are often mistreated when cost-cutting and the convenience of staff are prioritized over residents' safety. Second, and this is really the way things are moving toward, and it's scary, it is, strictly speaking, more expensive to be alive than dead. Now that assisted suicide and euthanasia are legal, anyone who requires personal assistance, medical care, or medication must justify the expense of staying alive.
It's just the other way around.
Right.
Okay, it should be life first, not the opposite.
Right, exactly. No one wants to be a financial burden on their family or society, and that feeling could turn into an economic incentive for assisted suicide or euthanasia. So that's where we're going. And, it's interesting, managed care started coming around in the 80s, and, people had to justify having different surgery. It was very worrisome for disabled people because disabled people don't get better. So managed care organizations were saying, no, you can't get that surgery because that won't cure you. It's like, well, I needed to maintain my situation. And this is just another similar situation where, people have to justify their existence, and that's not cool. Any comments, Taylor?
Well, the fake DNRs remind me of stories that we've heard from other disability activists quite recently. So did these people in the hospice have nobody right with them to advocate for them? Right. And were the forms put in files that only staff knew about? So the people themselves couldn't access them. Any loved ones coming to visit them couldn't access them.
Right, exactly. And there are a lot of situations where people, even people who are competent are deemed, someone decides they're incompetent, so they, just make up a do not resuscitate order or something like that and appoint a guardian, and that person has no more rights.
Yeah, sometimes a false DNR.
Right. Okay, our second topic, updates on bills in Guernsey, Finland, and New Zealand.
Guernsey, it's a small island in the southwest of England.
Right, it's in the English Channel, and it's its own government.
It was the only part of the UK who was invaded in Second World War.
Right. Okay. In the last week, 2 countries have rejected assisted suicide. On May 13th, Guernsey's parliament voted against a requête, similar to a private member's bill in Canada, that would have legalized assisted suicide. The proposed law would have set up a model similar to Oregon's. Eligibility criteria included having full mental capacity and 6 months or less to live. So they were looking at an Oregon model, and they had a vote for it, and they turned it down. The British Medical Association and the Guernsey Disability Alliance both opposed the bill. The 7 members who proposed the bill released a statement saying, "Naturally, we are disappointed with the result, although it was not entirely unexpected. We remain of the view that this is an inevitable change, which in the fullness of time, Guernsey will one day adopt. However, that is a matter for our parliamentary successors, not us." And so hopefully that means they won't introduce it next year and the year after and the year after and the year after, but we don't know. So that's just the hope. Okay. Finland's parliament, according to a Finnish news story, voted 128 to 60 against legalizing euthanasia as well. The legislators are putting together a working group to investigate end-of-life care, which kind of makes sense to study the issue before you decide to start killing people.
Yeah. That's just logical and normal. You have to study carefully because it's a matter of life or death.
Right, right. And our final note is that we have an update on testimony that we sent to New Zealand's parliament in March about a bill that would legalize assisted suicide there. Apparently, the committee examining the bill has received over 35,000 submissions.
And we was one of them.
Right. And this was the largest public response to a proposed bill ever. This includes opinions on both sides of the issue. So the committee chair expects that it will take until March of 2019 to review all the submissions. And hopefully this extension signals a serious consideration of the issue by members of parliament rather than a rubber stamp approval of medical killing. And it's important because, you know, Quebec took a lot of time for its study, but its study basically had started out with its conclusion in the name of the study commission, which was the Commission on the Question of Dying with Dignity.
Yeah.
So
you study just one side of the debate and you don't look the other side. So you're always on the right side.
Well, there was lots of testimony that came in opposing euthanasia and assisted suicide, but they didn't care about it. They basically ignored that testimony, and they only accepted the testimony in favor of euthanasia.
People who say yes, but
right
was not taken care of.
Right, exactly.
They just say yes.
Right,
okay.
Right.
Personally, I'm a bit worried about Finland because the way this end-of-life care committee is going to go is they're essentially lining up euthanasia and palliative care as 2 separate options.
Right.
A problem that I have with a lot of anti-assisted suicide activists, still love working with you, but people tend to make palliative care the one-size-fits-all answer.
Right, exactly. People act like palliative care is the be-all and end-all, and they refuse to acknowledge that there are problems in hospice care. There are a lot of people in palliative care who don't accept the principle that palliative care is not supposed to accelerate death, and people don't understand that there needs to be a lot more than palliative care to enable people to have true autonomy.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Taylor?
I should bring up the idea that legalizing assisted suicide as a necessary part of being a progressive country that respects human rights, that's not true.
Right.
Neither is the idea from the 7 people in Guernsey, where legalization is just going to happen.
Right, exactly. It's not a progressive. People think it's progressive, and that's why the media is so behind it.
Yeah,
but
it's progress. But
because they're only looking at the service, and they don't.
It's a regression.
Right, it's a regressive.
It's like
policy.
the year 1926, 1928, when what they call it at the time, just keeping the people who are in good health. Eugenics.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a sign. Just we are back to eugenics.
Right. Okay, if you want more information about the subjects that we talk about, you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. Visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Doink. Doink.